how spirit and matter, which are kind of opposing in the realm of two-ness, right? They come together.
Yeah.
And when people like you and me maybe see nature has having a spiritual dimension, I believe that spirit and matter come together, and that's what nature is. Spirit and matter coming together.
Can you expand on how that connects to our digestion and immune system?
What we are from this three-element perspective is a mind that balances the spiritual and material. But not only those poles, but all the poles of the human condition are balanced by who we are, how we choose to balance the big and the small, the, this or that. They're all building who we are. So our unique way of balancing these principles where they show up in our lives are who we are from this three-element perspective.
I saw some young kids in a play park, and they were with technology in the play park, like smartphones, playing games in a play park, which is supposed to be physically to play. In the future, humans will be addicted to their technology, and the technology will become the drug of the future, something like that. Hey Conscious Man 7 family, quick question before we start. Do you love the depth of these conversations but hate when ads break the flow? I get it. Ads can feel like speed bumps on a highway, pulling you out of that deep zone. That's why we created a way for you to enjoy every episode completely ad-free while supporting the show at the same time. For just a few bucks a month on Patreon or Locals, you'll get full access to uninterrupted episodes. You'll get direct access to me so you can ask me any questions that you have, some cool other perks like early releases, and you'll also help us keep bringing you the powerful conversations that mainstream platforms won't touch. The link is in the show notes. Join us there and be part of this movement. Ever look up and see those dull, grey skies streaked with chemtrails, and you feel your energy sink? You're not imagining it. Something in you knows the sky isn't supposed to look that way. But what if you could bring back the blue? What if there was a way to clear the air inside you and above you? That's where the Chembo comes in. They create powerful orgonite, tools that generate orgone energy, the life force that helps neutralize EMFs from your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi, and even 5G. It's nature's way of restoring balance, bringing cleaner air, calmer energy, and deeper sleep. Every piece from the Chembo is handmade, from tactical tower busters to beautiful pyramids and jewelry, crafted with the precise ingredients to generate real orgone energy. And here's the best part. They've proven it. For over 10 years, they've cleared thousands of miles of chemtrails, bringing the blue back to the skies around the world. So if you're ready to take back your weather and your well-being, go to thechembo.com. Use coupon code CM7 for 10% off and experience the shift for yourself. Don't fear the chemtrails or the EMF. Be empowered with the Chembo and never feel helpless again. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. Modern medicine looks at symptoms. Ancient wisdom looked at balance. But what if true healing isn't found in a pill, but in the fire that drives you, the air that breathes you, the water that moves you, and the earth that holds you? Hello friends, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host Todd Cave, and today we're diving into a conversation that reconnects you with the natural laws that built the cosmos itself. My guest, Dr. Howard Walsdorf, known as the 4-Element Doctor, has spent over 35 years as a holistic chiropractor exploring how the principles of fire, air, water, and earth shape not just our physical health, but our consciousness. His work bridges science, metaphysics, and ancient renewal models that can help us rise above stress, disease, and disconnection. In this episode, we'll decode the hidden language of the elements inside you and reveal how aligning with them can make you stronger, calmer, and more consciously alive. So buckle in, because this one might just change how you see your body, your health, and your place in the universe.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You got to be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it, Dr. W.
I like that. Howard. You did a really nice intro on that one. Did a good job.
Welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. How are you today?
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm really interested to talk to you today because, as we were talking off camera, I've covered healing in many different forms on the show. But what really intrigued me is the 4 elements. And it is a perspective that I've never heard of before. And it fascinated me. So I was like, okay, I need to talk to this guy because there has to be some sort of ancient wisdom or something that is hidden from the general masses that we can reveal today.
I don't understand why. I don't understand why you've been doing this for a while and why no one's really intersected with you with the 4 elements. And it's a privilege I have, and it's been a heavy lift because people just don't know much about it for some reason. But what I like to say is that the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth, are the foundation of Western civilization. I like to say the smartest and wisest of people for thousands of years studied the 4 elements and applied it to their lives. It's just an underappreciated fact of humankind, not just the Western tradition, but in the East you had the 5 elements in the Chinese system, which
5.
They have wood and metal. They don't have air.
Okay.
And we can go into that at some point, the difference between the 4 and the 5. And that understanding the 5 elements, challenged by the 5 elements after being grounded in the 4 elements, made me appreciate what the 4 elements are even better, because before the 5, you have the 4. So it's just my greater point is it's a privilege to bring this knowledge, this ancient wisdom, to more and more people, and always being surprised that it's something new that most people to find new, for most people. However, most people are aware of astrology, and astrology is 4 element based.
Yes.
So that's sort of the fun way that the 4 elements can kind of still intersect ourselves today in this modern world, because people might know they're a fire sign or an earth sign. And so that's where the 4 elements kind of play with us in today's world. That said, I do like to think that everybody has within them this spiritual sensibility, this natural sensibility, whatever you want to call it, that these 4 elements, this fire, air, water, earth concept resonates with them, that something like stuck out to you that, oh, this is kind of cool. What is it about fire, air, water, earth that you've heard about, right? Have you heard about that as a foursome, or not even?
So I have heard about it, and I know that these elements are what kind of like the fabric of our society in terms of how the ancients lived. And, some people believe that by in-tuning themselves with these elements, they would have mystical powers, etc. Right. So to have it understood or to be mentioned with healing at the same time was what fascinated me, because I know things like sound healing, but this is like talking about healing in terms of the 4 elements. So I was like, okay, you know what? This is something slightly different. And, you know, we're very much on this channel about the evolution of human consciousness and giving people bringing the best minds on the planet, right? To share their knowledge with us and to enlighten us, because we're in a consciousness shift where we're being asked to look at ourselves in the mirror. And people like yourself know that I deem have part of the puzzle, because the puzzle is a vast one, and all the elements that there are, you know, I'm trying to bring all those elements together under one podcast, so that basically this show is like a library in the future for people to go back to and learn, because we've had some amazing conversations, and I'm sure today is going to be another amazing one as well. So let's dive right in. So what first led you down the path from traditional chiropractic work into the world of ancient elemental healing?
All right. Well, I'd have to go back to before I became a chiropractor, to be quite honest with you, Todd. I was always into nature. My mom's called me her nature boy. I had two other brothers. One was into cars and that kind of thing. Another one was into something else. And I was into nature. And a lot of people, you know, hung out in the woods, and I did that. But I just somehow felt a calling to nature, and I didn't know quite what it was, but I clearly was into, you know, the pond that was down the street, the woods, whatever. But then I went to college at what's called New York State College of Environmental Science and Forestry. So I was going to be something to do with a naturalist or something on that order, park ranger, whatever it is. And then I took a course in astrology. As an undergrad, you take these courses of interesting. It was a 9-credit course, and it just fascinated me because they talked about these 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth, and that resonated with my nature perspective. I wanted to believe that something about this, and it's useful to appreciate that fire is the sun. Nature's sun is the fire element, and it is useful from the get-go. It might not be relevant right now, but there's an order to these 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. So it's always useful to appreciate from the sun, the earth is at the bottom, air is lighter than water. So those are the 4 elements. And a lot of times people don't appreciate this order, and it comes up later in a significant way. But anyhow, so I learned about the 4 elements in this astrology course. And then at the same time, I took courses in yoga, Kundalini yoga. So I was really into yoga, which had a spiritual context with the body. And they have the chakras, things like that. So my MO back then and continues is that these spiritual concepts, I want to believe that fire, air, water, and earth were spiritual, had a spiritual heft to them, and a dimension, a principle. I like to call them spiritual principles. And my belief was that everything that's spiritual is a sort of mumbo jumbo if it doesn't have some physical presence that makes it real. And that's what I ultimately believe. So my mission, my drive, has been to find ways that these 4 principles that the ancients called fire, air, water, and earth, that they saw as the sun, the air, the water, and earth, embodied these fundamental principles that are about balance, ultimately. And they're so productive on this planet, in nature, that we have this elegant balance that eventually led up to us as humankind being what you might think of as this leading edge where the 4 elements come together in the most elegant of ways. So that's sort of I don't know if that was the answer to your question, but that's how I got into them.
That's how you got into it.
Then I went to chiropractic college.
Okay.
And learned about the body. And I didn't find it satisfying on some level because it didn't really put the human body in a spiritual context that I wanted it to be in. And you know, clearly I'm more spiritually oriented than the average person. I didn't realize that along the way, but that's just my nature. Is I just have a spiritual, strong sensibility, just like a strong natural sensibility, and I fused them together, and I just became this fascinated, and I've dove into the 4 elements ever since. And I've been, you know, really, I've been working on it with over 40 years. maybe close to 50
Wow.
years now since being an undergrad in
Wow.
college, So there I am. That's my background, my backstory, perhaps.
Okay, so was there a personal moment, an illness, an insight, or a failure that made you realize that the modern medical model was missing something fundamental?
Well, I always felt that, I was into, even when I was growing up, we were not brought up with much medicine. But I was never felt good about modern medicine. I'm not totally against it at all. I believe in vaccines for the record and things on that order. But I don't think it gives the full picture. So I've seen failures. Yeah, of course, I've seen failures of modern medicine with the way my father and my mother's passed on. Things on that order. In my practice, I see people that are, that modern medicine is not doing a good job on, that has failed, I guess you could say. So, I don't believe that modern medicine gives the right context for what I would call a wholesome, more balanced, conscious way of healing. And I think that we're meant to be challenged by what afflicts us in some way, and to learn from it. And, modern medicine has its great value when we're in acute crisis, but I think we're all struggling to be the best we can be. And modern medicine doesn't necessarily push us in that direction. So when we have some condition, some illness, something that rises to the surface, it's a good time for us to figure out what's out of balance. And I don't think modern medicine really does that. It doesn't solve that for that need of people.
No, it really doesn't. And it's very much, I think, like surgeries and that kind of stuff, Western, that part of it is fantastic.
Incredible.
I think they're very, very good. But I think the actual like healing, I think it requires a mindset shift, because I think they're just looking at the symptoms and not looking at the root causes. And I think that is one of the main issues. Plus, too, is a little bit deeper in terms of how the medical industry was taken over. But I think is one of the main things is a mindset shift in terms of looking at the root cause instead of just looking at what is there, because you can treat what is there, but is not really getting to the source,
Correct. Yeah.
And I think that's the main challenge that Western medicine has, so it needs a paradigm shift, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think it might be useful to, and you might appreciate it from what you've been doing as a podcaster, is that there's different contexts that different healers, different visionaries, different paradigm builders try to use to figure out how to do it in a more wholesome manner that you're kind of describing, I think, which would be the counter to modern medicine. And that's where I see myself fitting in, is to offer something that I think is, I hopefully share with you that it presents itself as a valid alternative paradigm, and with tools to help, not just I do what I do in my office, helping my patients, but I have a system, what I call my holistic self-renewal system, that I offer free, actually, online at my growingholistically.com site, completely free. And it talks about using these 4 elements to kind of create balance. And we can talk about that later, but I guess my reason for bringing that up is we all need tools to figure out how to regain something of what we want that's lacking from modern medicine. And you interview people that give us different tools, I guess. And my toolkit revolves around the 4 elements in lots of different ways. From exercising to breathing to eating foods to walking, it intersects everything. I have to confess to, in my opinion.
Okay, awesome. So you've studied pre-modern civilizations and their renewal models. What was the biggest revelation that changed how you viewed the human body?
Well, was that going back to the history of healing, that is, people don't realize. Just let me give you this context. Is Hippocrates. You know who Hippocrates was? He was considered to be the father of modern medicine.
Yes.
Clearly,
Medicines. Yeah.
Clearly, that he was a four element physician. Everybody back then looked at the body in the context of the four elements. I mean, it's just without a doubt. I'm not putting up something that's controversial. Aristotle, everybody, back then, Western science, Western medicine, Western philosophy, all was about the four elements. And I don't want to digress again, but you were asking what, the fact that pre-modern scientists and medicine focused on the four elements, and to be fair, they led to the four humors of Aristotle and others that clearly weren't the right way of going with the four elements. It led to bloodletting and leeches, things like that. But at the same time, it talked about fresh air and herbs and physicality and walking and I'm trying to say all those other good things about balance. So and my opinion is you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. The bathwater revolves around the four humors and all the stuff that was part of that tradition of the four elements back then. And the four humors, just to set the story more fully, is they were around during Washington's time, for example. So for thousands of years, the four humors were there, and they were wrong, but they were studied it, and they gave people a sense of how the body worked and how the balance of the body worked. So, but the four elements speak to more than just these four humors. They were the wrong, they took them in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And I'm here to kind of bring it back because the body, according to the four-element way of thinking, does manifest these four elements. And what I've done is found ways that the body does manifest these four principles, elements, energies, forces of the cosmos, that nature shows us as the sun, the air, the water, the earth. So the four elements are really the embodiment of four spiritual principles. And I wouldn't mind talking about that a little bit at some point, is how the four elements embody these four cardinal principles. Because to understand the four elements, I believe you have to four forces that rule the body, that move through the body, that build the body. You have to understand what these principles that nature embodies, that our human body is the kind of the leading edge of this elegant balancing of principles.
Okay, so basically, what was the biggest revelation that changed how you view
the biggest revelation?
The human body?
The biggest revelation, I would say, is that I was able to figure out that the bones of the body are the earth. The flesh, the blood of the body is the water. The muscles that move us through air, which you have to understand only if I go through this metaphysical reasoning of what four elements are and the principle, is our muscles. And the nervous system up top with our brain is the fire principle. So that was my revelation, if I had to say it in some context that speaks to me. Your question there was that I realized that the body with the nervous system, our muscles that move us through air, the blood, and the other watery elements of our bodies is the water, and earth is the bones, and these embody within us these four principles. And there's ways of, in each of these four elements, holistically, and that's another, I guess, thing that might answer your question is my revelation is that there's a holistic way that these elements manifest in the body. That was an important revelation. So, for example, all the bones of your body are the earth element in my model. Can you kind of see how earth is the bones of your body? Right?
Yes.
They're dense.
Yes.
They're the most physical aspect of our system, of our body. Can you see how your foot might have more of that earth element? It's at the bottom. It engages that earth ground.
Yeah, bottom of the feet.
It engages the ground. Can you see that the heel of the foot might even have a more a density of that earth principle. It expresses itself at the heel. That's where we hit the ground with, for example, when we walk. So my point here is that in the holistic perspective paradigm, every level has the same pattern. So we saw that Earth it repeats itself. So there's, the Earth is all the bones within all the bones. Your feet are embodying it even more. Even within your feet, the heel has that Earth principle strong within it. So the holistic paradigm is that these patterns repeat on every level. They keep repeating. And even within the foot, that's the Earth. In what I have developed is what I call a sacred architecture model, where even within your feet, you have the water principle and the earth principle. It's just these patterns keep repeating. It helps me with that revelation. I've been able to help my patients better by strengthening, for example, within their feet, they might have that water circuit off. And I might need to work on their arches or their big toe, or their air circuit off, and I might have to work on their lateral foot bones. So these patterns repeat. And that's been my revelation in so many ways, is to see how this pattern has built our human body in the most elegant of ways. That was my answer.
Okay. Very interesting. So you actually touched on a little bit on what I wanted to ask you next, but so I guess you can take it to another level to this question. So we were talking about what exactly is the 4-element model, and how do the fire, air, water, and earth show up specifically within the body, mind, and spirit?
Okay. It's a lot. There's a lot packed into that question, I think. So you got that good. I like that you got fire, air, water, and earth in the right order. Good job. And I like to say this. I didn't say, if you want to remember the order, think of how you might not appreciate in Mexico, but for all those Americans up there listening, think of the way somebody from Boston might say the four elements. So fire, air, water, and the E of earth is silent in that 4-element version of the 4 elements. Got it? The 4 elements. That's one way of remembering it. It's kind of fun.
Yes,
but
yes,
anyhow.
yes. Yeah, get it.
Now I forgot your question, but what was the question?
So basically, I wanted to find out, like, cause you were talking about the 4-element model. So I wanted to understand, how exactly does that 4-element model, how does the fire, the air, the water, and the earth show up within our body, our mind, and our spirit?
Right. Well, I talked about how the body embodies it, right? With the bones, the blood, the air, and the nervous system, muscles, and that's the body. What I'd like to do, can I just get metaphysical for a few moments before I answer that?
Yeah,
because
go on.
I want to get to spirit and all that stuff. Do you mind?
Okay.
So, because to understand, for example, the way the 4 elements get embodied in our mind, is to appreciate this. Okay, so I'm going to go through how the 4 elements came to be. So give me like 4 minutes here to give you a quick course in what I call holistic 4-element metaphysics. And that's sort of what I've done. I've created this model that's built upon this holistic 4-element philosophy, if you will. So I'm going to go with this oneness first, this pre-Big Bang oneness. And somehow that oneness formed physical diversity, which is creation, right? And that's what we have. We're in this physical world. And many people, believe that there's some spiritual unity that came first. And we're going to assume that there's a oneness principle. And we're going to use numbers to get us from the spiritual abstract unity oneness to physical diversity. And we're going to use numbers to get us there. So we're going to think of number 2. All right. And just like a circle might be the geometry of oneness, all inclusive, super symmetrical. It's a time-honored way of thinking about unity and oneness. Would you say, Todd? Think of the geometry of 2 being a line. And what's at the end of a line are those 2 arrows going in opposite directions. To the biggest big and the smallest small. All the yin-yang opposites were created when God, the spirit of life, whatever you want to call this force, said, let there be two in my goal of something physical here. So, so spirit and matter, all those opposites were created with two-ness. And we tend to think of opposites as attracting, but in this realm of two-ness, what are they doing? They're going in the direction of those arrows.
Opposing.
In opposite directions.
Opposing.
I'm sorry.
Opposing.
Right.
Opposing.
And so the cosmos had to create the next thing. And I do believe that numbers are worthy of using. They are a time-honored thing that philosophy and scientists, metaphysicists, and all that have used through the ages. So we're just building on their way of framing things. So you have the arrows of two-ness, the line going opposite directions, and then you get three. And what happens with three is you get these opposites that get brought together and create a triangle. And big and small, for example, come together and create medium, moderate. All those middle things happen with threeness. Does that kind of make sense on some intuitive level? Can you see how spirit and matter, which are kind of opposing in the realm of two-ness, right? They come together.
Yeah.
And when people like you and me maybe see nature having a spiritual dimension, I believe that spirit and matter come together, and that's what nature is: spirit and matter coming together in a way that So nature is physical and it's also spiritual. So I think it's a really beautiful way of seeing the spiritual dimension of nature. And this is what I wanted to bring up with what you said about the body, the mind, and the spirit. Can you see how in our human condition we have the body and the spirit as the two poles of our being? The spiritual and material dimensions of our being. What we are from this three-element perspective is a mind that balances the spiritual and material. But not only those poles, but all the poles of the human condition are balanced by who we are, how we choose to balance the big and the small, the this or that. They're all building who we are. So our unique way of balancing these principles, where they show up in our lives, are who we are from this three-element perspective. Does that make sense on some intuitive level?
Yes, it does.
So what happened in three, though, is we just get this, we're in this metaphysical state in some sense. We have mind, we have nature, we have medium. They're kind of not, you can't put your hand around and say, this is medium. You kind of, nature, it's metaphysical. My mind is metaphysical. You have to go to the next number. And that number would be 4, right? So this is where I go back to that oneness geometry. And so to get initiated into this form way of thinking, think of us drawing a circle. You go like that. And what 4 does is I call it the buttressing principle. Just like 3 is the interconnective balancing principle. 4, what 4 does is it's in those 90-degree angles, believe it or not. In physics, they call it the orthogonal principle. All of physics is built upon 90-degree angles, believe it or not. Orthogonals that allow different dimensions to happen. And they're built upon these 90-degree angles. So my image for you to kind of get it is that nature, which was metaphysical at 3, now becomes physical. And you get these principles that ultimately were about oneness, duality, two-ness, balance, threeness, interconnected balance, threeness, and the need for physicality. They get physicalized in nature as the sun, the air. So this is an interesting thing about, so it fills up what's between those two arrows of the line. I would suggest, think of it as space. Space is that principle of two-ness as it manifests in the cosmos. I think it's a useful thing to appreciate, and I don't think I'm off on that. So the space principle is really the air element. Now, what nature does, it takes that air element, that space that fills intergalactic space, and makes it productive for life, and we call it air. So the air and space are kind of that principle of two-ness. And then you have water and you have earth. So as long as I'm going here, can I go one more step here in giving the kind of the physicality of it all? Yeah.
So you're saying then that the four represents
Earth element.
the physicality of I guess could we go on a stretch and say reality? Can we say of being? Because
it's the physicality
it's right now
of here and now awareness, where you are. So it's the earth element, right? That'd be the fourth element, or earth, right? It's so now we can get to where you wanted to go to,
the mind and the spirit,
the body, mind, and spirit. Exactly. So earth is the realm of the mundane, the physical things that have to get done every day. As an example, it's being pragmatic. It's being productive on some level. Yeah, that. It's what else did I want to say? It's the materialistic needs of ourselves are built upon the earth element. Technology is within our human culture an expression of the earth element in many ways, right? So within the mind, it would be our need to be practical. For example, the water element would be our need to have our needs met, to deal with. There's different directions I can go. The water principle is oftentimes about emotional needs, and let me just back off a little bit and talk about the air element and where that fits in. Because the air element, think of that the air element is about intellectual discernment, whereas the water element is the opposite, about kind of putting things together. So think of it that intellectuality and the like is about dividing things to smaller and smaller tunuses. Remember, tunus is about that air element, that thing there. So what intellect does is it divides things into, and that's how we understand how things work. The how-ness of our life is built upon the air element. And that's traditional in astrology, just for the record. Air element people are intellectuals, right? I apologize for a car being loud in the parking lot next door. I don't know if you can hear that.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right.
Some guy with a little too much testosterone, perhaps. Hopefully he's passing out that way. All right, good enough. He's gone on his way. So air is the intellectual capacity of ourselves that splits things into smaller and smaller tunuses. And that's what science is within the human culture is that intellectual thing taking to a collective whole. So whereas science figures out the how-ness, how things work by way of teasing them apart, the arts are about putting things together in a way that answers our own needs. So the whyness of our lives is that water element within us, our needs, our subjective needs that we have to fulfill to be happy and the like.
Okay, and how does that link to the mind and the spirit?
So, well, we have to balance all these things within us. So in other words, the fire element is about our spiritual needs, our spiritual sense of being. What I believe spirituality in many ways comes down to is feeling part of a larger oneness beyond ourselves. In our early stages as a child, it's the family. We're part of a larger family. We're part of a larger community. A country, whatever it is. That's almost a spiritual, feeling part of something larger than yourself. Our soul is that unity of our self in a way. So that's the fire principle, which speaks to philosophy, is part of the human condition. So we're all meant to be a little philosophical. So I believe one of the things that's lacking today is that we're not philosophical. And the 4-element mission that I'm on is really to make people a little bit more philosophical by way of this 4-element way of thinking. That the fire element is the highest principle, right? And it's about spirituality, that unity, that oneness. It's also about being a little philosophical, understanding about it's about the whatness. Science and intellect is about the how-ness. Philosophy and spirituality is about understanding the essence of what it is. And what it is principles in balance. That's what the
Okay.
that's what
Okay.
the
See.
cosmos is basically, are these principles in balance. Yeah.
Okay. So you've said bones and posture reflect the earth principle. Can you expand on how that connects to our digestion and immune system?
Well, so digestion, for example, and the immune system. Well, first off, and this kind of relates to acupuncture. In acupuncture, they use these earth, water. They don't have air, like I said. They have wood and metal. But for example, the earth element is in their system is the spleen in the stomach. So so digestion is affected by our earth principle, and so is the immune system. So the immune system in Chinese medicine is related to the spleen, and the spleen and the stomach, like I say, both earth element organs or channels within us. And let me say this is that one of the tools that I offer people is to look at how they can channel these principles into their lives. And it's a good one that you brought up, that the digestion and the immune system, because the earth element is so lacking in my experience. As I've been working over 35 years with my patients, the earth element is becoming weaker and weaker, more predominantly a troublesome part of people's lives, because it's and it builds our sturdiness. So getting back to a little bit about in our body, our mind, and our spirit, how these four elements manifest, our quotient of sturdiness is an earth element functionality. So is earth, like I ask my patients, is earth sturdy or is it flimsy like water? It's sturdy, right? It has that locked, buttressed sturdiness. So the earth principle gives us our level of sturdiness. And when we don't feel, when we don't have that earth element within us strong, we aren't sturdy. Our posture collapses, down. I tell my patients, what's good posture? When we have bad posture, we kind of collapse this way. When we have better posture, we're aware of it, we kind of bring ourselves toward that backside. We have greater alignment toward the backside. Remember we said the heel of the foot was the earth side of the foot.
Yeah.
This is the way it holistically comes together. Alignment of earth, we bring ourselves toward the backside. Bad posture, we go like this, forward. And so many people, we were talking about earlier with you before we came on, how people with their cell phones and big part of modern society, we have all that forward stuff that we're doing, that we're not getting that earth circuit working. And so I'm on a mission. If I had to pick one element to really try to reinforce in people's lives, it is that earth element. And as a chiropractor, I work on the earth element with alignment of the skeletal system. But I love working on all the principles, all the elements. So if you were to walk better with heel strike, what happens when you heel strike is there's actually an energy that we know about in science. It's called a piezoelectric current. So this is where these principles actually do have form. They have an energetics. Everything is mumbo jumbo unless there's something backing it up or that it manifests as. So this is kind of the beauty and the poetics. The form way of thinking it's spiritual. My way of thinking, it's practical. It's poetic, water element force behind it, and it's I guess what I want to say is poetic, in that when you heel strike with that heel of that earth element within you engages the greater earth below you, what happens is those crystal bone molecules at the heel get deformed a little bit. They rebound, and an electric current, a direct current, DC current, comes up your leg and stimulates your osteoblast to produce more bone. And for women, that's really important. When they reach menopause, you got to get those bones to get stronger. So my poetic point here is, as the earth within you, i.e., your bones, engage the greater earth below you, this earth energy comes up and makes your own earth stronger. And I believe it's not just your bones that get strong. I believe that you become more sturdy. Your alignment is better. You just become, there's something happens when you draw on that earth energy. and with a good walk. And people don't walk anymore as much as they used to, and they don't get that earth element. And then they walk with soft things under. They walk with soft shoes too much, in my opinion. And that's another whole discussion. We can talk about it if it comes up. But there's so many ways that modern world technology has softened us up. Earth is about hardiness. And we're losing that hardiness because we don't draw that earth element within us in lots of different ways. Did that answer some of your question there?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to understand how it connects to digestion and the immune system.
The stomach. Okay, so just think of this as the stomach have a awareness to them, a physical awareness where they're present. So everything is meant to line up toward the backside. So if you have bad posture, your stomach's going to come forward. It's always good to bring. So I've exercises as part of Format Yoga, which people purposely bring their shoulders back to bring the stomach back, or that the bones that the stomach's attached to back. That's one way of thinking about the stomach. The thymus gland, which is the part of the immune system here, there's ways of drawing it back. There's ways of doing 4-element yoga. I've devised actually a way of channeling these principles by way of yoga type emotions. So for example, for the thymus gland, which deals with the immune system, you might be given an exercise where you're doing this side to side motion like this, or you might be pushing back at the level of your thymus gland, which is your immune system's home, mother of sorts. So there's ways of, I believe, bringing, and that another whole level of it is nutrition. So there's a nutritional aspect to these organs that by eating healthy, so these elemental principles don't stop at 4. I mean, I should say that too, is that once you open yourself up to the concept that there's these principles that nature embodies, as an herbalist that I am as well, we talk about herbal principles. So there's different herbs have different principles that in some sense are these 4 elements in lots of elegant manners that we can strengthen our immune system or our stomach through. So there's lots of different ways that the 4 elements express themselves in, so nutrition, I have this, 4-element nutrition that's a whole other aspect as we apply these 4-element principles to food, for example.
Okay, so how do these elemental forces interact in our daily lives, and what happens when one of them dominates or weakens?
So when one of them weakens, like the earth element, we kind of fall apart a little bit. We get more anxious. A lot of people are anxious these days. So the nervous system is the fire element. And you kind of see that. We talked about that earlier. It's the highest of the 4 elements. Our brain is up top. So the nervous system is getting a lot of overstimulation these days with modern, all the light coming in with all the screens of our lives. There's a lot of fire that we're having to deal with every day. So there's oftentimes an imbalance. Even though fire is the spiritual dimension, it doesn't mean that it manifests as the spiritual dimension all over, right? At one level, it's just the stimulation of light coming into our eyes. So we have this overstimulation of fire that helps or can produce anxiety, for example. And the counter to that is doing things that bring other principles into one's life. To walk more, to be outside, to channel these other principles. And I tell my patients, to get outside. When we're inside, we're stimulated, our nervous system, that fire element within us gets stimulated by the 4 walls that we're in, by the things that are in this room of ours. When we're outside, we get stimulated by a whole other set of stimulations by nature. And our nervous system comes up with different ideas, different strategies, different insights. So this formative way of thinking helps us to appreciate that it's worth having more natural things in our life on so many different levels, from walking to better alignment, posture, breathing better, that air element, moving through space with, exercising our muscles in different manners, meditating, getting our fire element stronger in that manner.
Okay. So you often say the elements aren't metaphors, but living principles. What's the scientific or energetic truth behind that statement?
Well, I'd like to think that, getting back to the fire element, for example, which is the sun, right, and the stars, or nature, are the way that this fire element manifests in the cosmos. What people don't realize, what's kind of fun to think about, is how the sun's light gets created. Is 4 hydrogens fused together, create 1 helium. So light really is a oneness energy. When it comes down to it, 4 turns into 1, and light gets created. So I don't know if that's directly related to what you're saying, but there's something real about these 4 elements. We can't deny them, just like you can't deny 1, 2, 3, and 4. Come in succession like that. You can't deny that there's this sun, there's air, there's water, and this physicality. It's just sort of the way it is. And what this form way of thinking does is it helps us see, and they're built upon maybe these spiritual principles that the sun really is created by this oneness force of 4 turning into 1. And we know that the sun makes us feel the spiritual, like up here in Syracuse, when it's cloudy for 5 days in a row or longer, when the sun shines, finally, we get renewed. We talk about it, that our spirit gets renewed. That's the fire force. It's this spiritual renewal that life is built around, that we as humans are even more built around, because we have that fire principle working in us more than animals that don't have that prefrontal cortex like we do, right? So that fire element is really strong in humankind, right? You can understand that. I think most of your audience could, realize that humankind is kind of the leading edge of creation in a sense, and it's that fire element that's so strong within us, with the fire of our fire. So even our brain, in that holistic pattern, you have the 4 parts to it. In a sense, you have, and the most fiery part of the brain is that prefrontal cortex, which is the fire part of the cerebrum, then you have the parietal bones up here, which might be thought of as the water. The temporal bones here is the air, and then the occipital as the earth here, and the sphenoids is the fire. So there's interesting ways that you can see, once you understand the anatomy, like I do, you can see these 4 principles playing out any system that's functionally productive. And it allows me to help people as I bring balance to these systems that might be structurally off balance, which is useful too. And with 4 element yoga, if I can just say one more thing, is when you learn 4 element yoga, you can learn how to bring these principles into different weak areas of your body and build up what I like to think of the Chinese called qi. Is ultimately this air element force that muscularity draws into regional areas, like one's digestive system or immune system, for that matter.
Okay, that is very interesting. So how can understanding these 4 elements help us handle the pressures of modern living, anxiety, burnout, overstimulation with more resilience?
Well, I guess I believe that they inspire us to get more nature in our life. I'm on a mission for people to see that there's something special about nature. And a lot of us know that. And we have this intuition that we should do things that are more natural. The problem of today is that this modern world, we're so far removed from nature. And what I like to say sometimes is that every generation of humankind is more modern than the one that came before it. And that's what makes us humans different than other animals. Every generation of a mouse or a dog or a kangaroo is pretty much the same as the one that came before it. For humankind, every generation has always been a little bit more modern, right? But in the course of just 2-3 3 generations or just even 20 years, that gulf between the modern and what I like to call the primitive pole. So think of technology as the modern pole and nature as the primitive pole. And that we've always had that, humankind division there, part of the human condition. But that gulf between the modern and the primitive has driven itself so quickly. And that's why we feel so, there's a balance we find between the primitive and the modern, between nature and technology, but it's precarious. And the imbalance that we feel, I believe, and that's what I really want to shake into people's consciousness, if you will, is that at the core of this imbalance in so many ways that we feel is this imbalance between the modern and the primitive poles. And the primitive pole is nature. And that and at the core of nature, it's really interesting to realize is that the core of nature are the 4 elements. So if we want to understand the counter to this, the antidote. So I'm suggesting that the 4 elements really are the antidote. This is a bold statement I'm making here. But the 4 elements really are the antidote to modernity because they represent what's at the core of the primitive pole. And we need that what comes out of that primitive pole because we're so out of balance with it. And by understanding what these 4 core principles are, I think good things can only happen. That's really what I'm on a mission to do. And my book talks about it. I'm hoping to, that somehow I'm making myself somewhat clear to your people there.
Yeah. Okay, so you've said stress disorders often come from elemental imbalances. Right. Could you explain what that means, how to spot it in ourselves?
Well, I think if you feel like you're under stress, are you asking do you think that everybody seems to think they're under stress, right? So what was your question? Is it how to spot it or how to help them deal with it?
Yeah, how to spot it in ourselves? How can we tell when we have these elemental imbalances in ourselves?
I see what you're saying there. Well, where we have our issues. If we're anxious, it's really up here that are issues. So what I've done in my practice is I work with the chakras of yoga, and they divide the body into 7 regional functional spots, and there really are 7 what we call 7 axial levels of the skeletal system. And you have the cranial bones, you have the facial bones, which are a whole different anatomy than the cranial bones. You have the throat, you have the thoracic area, you have the lumbar spine, you have the sacrum, and then you have the coccyx. And the coccyx is called the root chakra, but in my way of thinking about all your foot and all your bones that support you, your legs are part of that 7th center, that regional coccygeal root chakra. My point in saying that is wherever you have weaknesses within one of those 7 regions, if it's anxiety, if it's a heart issue, if it's sinus issues, if it's lower back issues, neck issues, arm issues, it's a good way to find the place where you should focus. And how do you focus on it? Posturally, helping that area become posturally better, putting different exercise motions. Once you understand the way to pump motion to invigorate these principles within a weak area. What else? Breathing is a really valuable thing. I was going to talk about that earlier. If you're under stress, a lot of times what people are doing, they're breathing shallow and quick up here. I don't know if you've probably heard from different podcasts about diaphragmatic breathing and the like.
I've heard about it. And also how the breath out is also one of the most important parts of also the breath out, because I was talking to a guy and he was saying that a lot of us concentrate on the breathing in part, but the breathing out part is just
It's
as
part of a
important
cycle.
because that's what takes out the stress and the
Sure.
anxiety out
Absolutely.
of the body.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in think of breathing as this oomphiness. The air principle is about, we really haven't talked about it in the kind of the way that the principles manifest. The air element is about, it's lighter than water. It's the air principle is that hopefulness. It's our muscular robustness, our elbow room, our self-empowerment. So we haven't really touched upon that part of how they play out in the human condition or even in animals. Muscularity, which again, muscles are what move us through space, the air element. It creates our qi in Chinese medicine, and it creates our self-empowerment. And why I bring that up is breathing is ultimately a muscular activity. And we can either do it well or do it wrong. Most people do it wrong. Be frank with you, they breathe up here. And that's one of the stressing parts of the modern era is we don't breathe down into our diaphragm well enough. And that creates lots of troubles. So, if you wanted to improve your state of health on any level of these 7 regions I was talking about, just breathing better, which helps the nervous system, helps, posture even. You can use any of these principles to kind of restore a little bit of balance within the wholesome. If you breathe better, you also might notice, my earthy posture is changing. My nervous system is becoming more even keeled, things on that order. So these 4 elements all have a way of intersecting with each other, reinforcing, when used properly, the best of that principle being brought forward into one's life. So breathing is such an important part of this 4-element inspired lifestyle. And that's really what I'm promoting is a 4-element inspired lifestyle where we see these principles as embodying forces of nature and cosmic spiritual principles that are meant to be in balance, that are always in balance, but we're healthier when they're in productive balances within ourselves. And our culture, our civilization is better when they're in balance within that civilization. So right now, here in America, we got things are out of balance. All over the world, things are out of balance. And ultimately, these out of balance are these principles, in my opinion. The spiritual material, it's, money flowing up and not money flowing down. All these things are symptoms of imbalance that on some level or another, you might see them as beyond the 4 elements, but they're all these other principles that need to be in balance ultimately have these 4 elements at their core. They're all built upon interactions. So in other words, think of, if in my paradigm, think of your stomach as an embodiment of the earth within you. It's obviously lots of things have happened where these other principles are all getting involved to create that stomach, but somehow in a Chinese medicine way, it embodies that earth element. But there's so many principles that herbs talk about, that the human condition is about. So in astrology, for example, we have the 12 principles of astrology, this 12 signs. So this oneness, I just want to mention that this oneness doesn't just stop at 4. 4 is the foundation that's so useful to appreciate. The Chinese break down the oneness to 5 parts, and they have the wood and the metal. And what I would suggest to appreciate is the 5th element is what's lacking in this 4-element system is movement or time. Things are locked together. It might have the nervous system, the muscular system, the circulatory system, and bones, but we need movement and time. And that's what the 5th element is. That's the wood element. So who we are from a 5-element perspective is that wood entityness that puts all those 4 elements together. So don't think of wood as a dead tree, but as a living organism, as a symbol of wood as a living entity. That's who you are, your way of balancing these 4 principles. And in astrology, they break it into 12 parts. The 4 elements find their yin, yang, and what's called the mutable expression of each of them. So there's 12, 4 times 3 principles that uphold the oneness in the human condition that astrology talks about. I'm throwing a lot at you.
Okay. All right. So, what's one simple daily practice that helps balance all 4 elements for someone who's just starting
Walking and breathing as you're doing it well. Walking is probably one of the most important things that we can do as a human being to renew ourselves. As you're walking, what I like to tell my patients is this: it's the single thing that makes us human is that we're standing when we walk. It reinforces who we are as human beings. It's a cycle that we can enter, that we enter with heel strike. So the earth element, think of the earth as that heel strike, right? Think of that as the beginning of the walking cycle. And we don't hop, we walk right, left. And if we, another whole discussion is how these principles manifest in, so in form yoga, for example, the water principle is the side to sideness of the x-axis. So when we walk, that right, left is an embodiment of the water principle. And to appreciate how water fits into this, think of on the local level where each cell lives, you don't have the heart pumping at 120/80 your blood into the cells there. It's like 8 millimeters of pressure. It's very little pressure. The point I'm making is that right, left, that side to side motion pumps nutrition on the local level of our body. So that's one way of bringing water, that nutritive blood to an area. So you might have saw me do this before. That brings that water principle into the thymus gland of the immune system, of the stomach down here. So by bringing side to side motion, that brings nourishing blood tides into the body. So walking, that's what I'm trying to say. Walking just is nourishing to your body. It makes you sturdier, more aligned. You're using your muscular body. It brings that air principle. Your breathing may be a little bit better. Maybe you're focusing a little bit more on breathing down here. And then your nervous system is being stimulated by the outdoors. And you're having a different consciousness. That fire energy, the fire force within us is what creates consciousness in so many ways. It's our nervous system gets stimulated not by an indoor. So you don't walk on an indoor, whatever it's called, treadmill. I couldn't get that treadmill out of my mouth. Right. You don't walk on a treadmill. You get outside and you walk. You get stimulated by the world at large. So I would say walking is the number one. And Hippocrates, that we were talking about earlier, his famous slogan was, walking is the best medicine. And it truly is. So,
it's so mad, right? That you say that, because we have a world where you go to the supermarket and you see many of those little buggies with people, mostly overweight, and it's true. Most people don't really actually even walk. I mean, they may just walk from the bus station to their job or their train station to their job, but people don't actually walk or go for a walk, just to calm themselves or to have a thing.
Is that what you find? I'm curious how it is there in Mexico where you are. I think, from here, you're going.
I find that people today, they just don't do much physical exercise because, in Mexico, 70% of the population is either fat or obese, which echoes the same numbers in Europe and in North America in general. So I think clearly people don't do much walking because you wouldn't be that big if you were doing large amounts of walking, So
and what those people in Mexico are not doing as well, in my opinion, is they're eating denatured food where these principles of nature. So food is meant to feed into our blood these nutritive principles of nature. And if we don't get them and we eat all this starchy food and processed food, we get fat. And on top of that, if we don't walk, The problem is that we don't have reasons to walk. In the previous generations, you didn't have cars and buses and the like, I guess, and you just had to
And
walk.
walking now is from the dinner table to the fridge. That's basically what it is. You know what I mean?
I feel very privileged. I get to walk to work every day. So I live, 20-minute walk, about a mile. So I love it, walking to work every day, rain or shine. I'm typically walking, and it's helped to make me who I am. So many ways that what we choose to do makes us who we are. And I think if somebody wants to be, different than they are right now, it might be a good place to start, is to find a reason to walk. And it's not always easy to find a reason to walk. If you have an ability to walk to your corner or a store for, a hardware store, or to buy food, that's 15, 20 minutes away, do it. Don't look for reasons not to do it. When I walk to work, I think to myself, I say, when somebody questions me on it, I'd say, I'd rather be walking than sitting in front of a computer for the next 20 minutes. And I think that's the attitude that people have to start taking is, when it comes down to it, I guess I would rather be walking than sitting in front of, or doing this on my cell phone or whatever it is, looking at TikTok or YouTube. You should be getting some walking and ruminating. There's nothing wrong with ruminating, thinking about, troubles you're having. You come up with new strategies while you're walking, being stimulated by nature in a different way. Different things will pop into your mind. That's what's supposed to happen with walking. It doesn't have to be a spiritual experience or whatever, but it's meant to be our human experience that makes us more whole and balanced. Yeah.
Well, basically, the body gets weak if the body doesn't move.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that a lot of people don't really understand. So how can something as simple as posture, breath, or hydration shift our internal elemental balance?
Well, breathing, if we don't get that air principle within us, so oxygen is one expression or embodiment of that air principle. So if we don't breathe well, we're not going to have as much oxygen to empower our muscles. If we don't breathe well, we're going to be stimulating our nervous system, or what's called the sympathetic nervous system, as opposed to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our all is well nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight, stress, adrenaline stimulating nervous system. So if you don't breathe well, you're going to screw yourself up from that perspective of your nervous system getting over anxious and hyperstimulated. So there's so many choices we have that we can, if we're aware of them. And the problem is that so many people are unaware. They're unenlightened, if you will. And I think that getting back to the concept of, again, the four elements are the antidote to the stuff of the modern world. I really truly believe that. If I could kind of hit people over the head with it and we're just beginning the conversation of how they are embodying what we need, but just saying how we have to breathe well, we have to get good nutrition into our lives, we have to get out physically walking and hitting the pavement and being physical in this world. We need to be having a spiritual sensibility of being being part of something larger than ourselves. These are all parts of seeing things in a different paradigm that might stimulate one to have a healthier lifestyle. Ultimately, so many people want a healthier lifestyle, but they seem to be having a hard time getting there. And I think the four elements paradigm helps to maybe bridge that gap when they see, oh, this is part of a larger way of seeing nature and the world and the human condition and the cosmos, for that matter. That's what my goal is, to somehow stimulate this perspective.
Okay. So, guys, we can take a very, very short break here to say if you're feeling this conversation, make sure to pause for a moment. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs grounding, balance, or healing in their life. This message could just change their path. If you're listening on a podcast platform, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review, as that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. Also, follow us on Instagram at Adriano_246 or the Conscious Man 7 podcast and Todd Cave on Facebook to see what we get up to on the daily. Now let's go even deeper. So you've said we're meant to evolve through the body, not away from it. How does this elemental work activate higher consciousness?
Well, we all have a body, and we think about it when it's sick and when we have a dis-ease. But ultimately, our bodies, I believe, are the temple of God. It's our temple where we're meant to evolve ourselves, learn what we need to learn about becoming the best that we can be. The slogan for growing holistically is, helping you to become the best you can be. And I think that we all want to be the best that we can be. And I think that by seeing these 4 principles acting within you, you can embody these. You can evolve because you're going to see. There's another whole emotional. A lot of people might say, I'm trying to deal with emotional issues, things in that order, and that's not my biggest contribution in this 4-element realm. I believe that astrology, and the way in my book I talk about astrology, can be very useful in the emotional needs for people's evolution. But oftentimes our evolution is more of a spiritual evolution. And let's go there, if I could, is that we're meant to evolve up. The air principle is about the upwardness. Air rises. So nature's 4 principles help us to understand how these principles operate within us and what we're supposed to gain from them. So air's that uplift, that hopefulness, that buoyancy that we're meant to draw upon. And it's supposed to inspire us. We inspire air, we draw it in. And it helps us to feel one of the, right now we're in autumn, and that air, we were talking about earlier about the air principle, and we breathe it in, it makes us feel invigorated by that cool air. Air is the air, the element of robustness and coolness and, buoyancy. So it's a helpful tool to be able to breathe that in from time to time when you feel depressed and you want to evolve a little bit, to draw in that air element. But more than that, we evolve as we find ways of bringing balance into the weak areas of our lives. So into the weak, those 7 regions I was talking about. If that wants to be that could be somebody's challenge, is to use that as their body, their way of evolving through their body. Now, another way of doing it is just to appreciate that our spiritual evolution works its way from the root chakra into the sacral chakra, which is sometimes called the sex chakra, then the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra of yoga, the throat chakra, the third eye, the crown chakra. So there we have an evolution that yoga uses. I don't know if you're familiar with that very much, but you have, speaking of evolution.
Very. I'm very aware of it, yes.
So the chakras are a really useful tool in evolution of our human selves. And what I've been doing over the 35 years or more, working with the chakras since I took this yoga class, almost 50 years ago, is seeing how these parts of our body, using them well and bring these principles into balance within them, help us evolve that center and move up to maybe the next one if we want to. And to ultimately, what I believe is that the heart chakra is where, you have fire up. So just to help you get a sense of where I go with the chakras, you have, traditionally you have the crown chakra, which is the spiritual unity chakra down here. You have the third eye, the throat chakra, you have the heart chakra, solar plexus chakra, the sex or sacral chakra, and then you have the root chakra. And our human evolution is sort of seen to be moving upward. We're wired. Part of the human condition is I think we're all wired to move upward. Up is our by the creator, however you want to look at it, evolution. We all kind of moving upward in that for the fire, and away from maybe even though all four elements have to be balanced, we're kind of moving dynamically upward toward the fire, spiritual unity principle. So with that said, these four principles, or just not even talking about principles anymore, just talking about doing things that open your heart is always a good thing to do in our evolution, and it's resolving opposites in a very productive, poignant way for ourselves, and it's about putting, So I see things like in this manner, for example, is that the heart chakra is about feeling love and the like, and the throat chakra above that is putting that love into action with our arms, our hands, our skill set. We're all meant to have a skill set, I believe, to interact with other people. That's part of our human evolution, is to become skilled in something that we can make the oneness better by virtue of what we're bringing forward. And it might be just within our family. It might be, I don't know what we each have to find our own purpose, which ultimately is how we connect with others and find our purpose. And then we evolve. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so do you think the four elements are the bridge between science and spirituality, or the language they both lost?
That's a good question. I love that. That's well said. It's a language they both lost. And it is the bridge between them at the same time. I love that question because it really is what they have both lost. Spirituality. Was it spirituality? Was it, what did you say? Science? What was it?
Science and spirituality.
Yeah, I think that spirituality could really benefit from a paradigm that sees nature in spiritual terms, number one, and that sees nature's four elements as embodying these four cardinal interlocking principles that uphold this physical world that we're in. I think spirituality would benefit from that. Yeah. Science, on the other hand, would benefit from it as well. And let me just say this back, with those 4,000 years that I was talking about, where the four elements were studied by the wisest of scientists and the like, is that science used to have a spiritual foundation. Scientists used to be natural scientists, natural philosophers. They were an amalgam of natural scientists, natural philosophers. That's what they would call themselves, I think. And even during the Enlightenment, where religion was refuted, and the dogma of the Catholic Church and the like was put down, the scientists of the era still believed that the universe, creation, and even humankind was the embodiment of spiritual things. You had astrology as a divine science because they saw all of the world and nature as the embodiment of God, the logos, the strategy of God, effecting this world, and this is how it happened, and the four elements were kind of the logic of how he made it happen, if you want to look at it that way. So that's how scientists have seen it up until modern times. All pre-modern scientists saw it that way. And so I think science, getting back to what you were saying, is scientists today would benefit from going back and seeing some of their foundational stones, which are the four elements. And spirituality, the ancient spiritualists, the four elements were an integral part of their spiritual reality. They saw nature in spiritual terms, so I do think it bridges science and spirituality, and even religion. Can I just throw in religion here?
you literally took the words out of my mouth. I was literally going to say, I think that religion, science, spirituality, mathematics,
Mathematics is right there.
we're
1, 2, 3, and
all
4, right?
we're all basically one subject. This is how it feels to me, because what we have now is like these 4 separate type of religions. You have like spirituality as a religion, mathematics as a religion, science as a religion, and then you have religion as its own separate wing.
Well, they're all different. Let me say this, if I could, is they're all, because let me say about religion, if I may here, is religion is the water principle. So we went into religion, mysticality, that kind of thing is the water principle. And let me just share it with you, if I made this kind of way of thinking about it, is the water principle is about the interconnectedness and the balance, and think, but more so, think of it this way: is what water does in the science of water. What it does is it takes this white light of oneness, right, and it gives the color. It refracts as a prism, and so water refracts the oneness, and you get the rainbow, right? That's what a rainbow is water refracting the white light oneness, and you get the beauty of color. That's what water is all about, is it fleshes out the oneness, into the spirit, into flesh. And I'm glad we can mention that, because I think it's poignant here. So that's the water principle. Its spiritual force is that it fleshes out the oneness, and what religion is in this context, I believe, is what religion is that religion, ethnicity, bloodlines, that's all part of that water principle. So you have the tapestry of humankind, the color of humankind. That's the water principle. The diversity of life is a water functionality. You understand where I'm going on that one? Water diversifies, and so religion, ethnicity, tribal, this and that, they're all smaller units of the fire principle, and they're part of a larger oneness. So in a way, spirituality trumps religion, and what's useful to appreciate, if I may add this, is that in the realm of 2, you have spirit and matter. And my point in saying that is that, what is my point in saying that? Is that, that spirit, and that spirit and matter, fire and earth, air and water are secondary polarities. So, for example, air has more fire with lesser earth. Water has more earth with lesser fire. It's useful you got to know this if you really want to appreciate the 4 elements, because that's the way I believe that they should be appreciated. As in the realm of 4, it's fire, air, water, and earth. In the realm of 2, you have that polarity of fire and earth as primal, and then air and water are secondary polarities. And so my point in saying that is that water, religion, what trumps religion is the fire principle. So what religion is, so water has the fire of spirit in it, but the fire principle trumps the religion as far as the hierarchy, in a sense, of oneness, spirituality. I don't know. Hope you were able to follow that.
Okay, so I follow. So let's touch a little bit on fire then. So how does the energy of fire, often linked to ambition and anger, play into both disease and enlightenment?
Well, fire plays into one's aspirations. Fire is our goals. Our creativity comes out of fire. Okay, so we all want to be creative, or many of us want to be creative. We have our aspirations, our goals. That's all part of that fire force within us. So we all want that. And your greater question was what connected with fire?
Disease and enlightenment. Right. So how do they both play into ambition and anger, and also disease and enlightenment?
I think enlightenment comes as we understand these 4 elements, especially the fire element. Anger and stress, ultimately come when we don't understand, the greater picture that we're in. Maybe, I mean, anger is a fair emotion, and we all get it. And it seems as though in the there's a hierarchy. We don't want to stay angry, so it's sort of a lot of water energy down there in anger, and you want to not get stuck there, and you want to, evolve yourself. If you're stuck, if somebody's stuck in a totally angry state a lot, we're all gonna have moments where we have anger, but if you're stuck in an anger state of being, you're stuck in a very watery, swampy. Water is that emotional turmoil that we get stuck in. It is our emotions, it's our passions. That's all part of that water within us. And if that water is not inspired by higher level energies like air and fire, things will get swampy down there. And we can get our diseases, our cancers, I believe, even as this swampiness takes root in a place where, physiological processes get dampened out and things start growing that aren't meant to be growing in this swampy place where lack of motion is happening and where we're maybe storing and stilting our higher level emotions, and our emotions do get stuck in different parts of our body, oftentimes by how we use the muscles of our body. If we're like this, can you see how, fearful, being angry, you might have a different way of using your muscles when you're angry. All those things affect how we embody these emotions of our lives.
Okay. And can trauma or emotional pain be seen through the lens of elemental imbalance and healed that way?
I think that it can be. I mean, it's not my path so much, the emotional healing of sorts. When I give people 4-element yoga maneuvers to do, they do talk about when they bring these forces into different regions, different emotions come up, and they process them differently. So, the body is the repository of so much in our mind. And I think by appreciating these 4 principles and how they manifest in how we use our body, which is what 4-element yoga is all about, and this sacred architecture model that I have is all about. The more we do that, the more we can kind of let go of emotions that get stuck in us and free up stresses. We are a somatic being. One of the things I have a new sign in my office that says, somatic wellness, a worthy adventure. And my patients say, well, what does that mean, somatic wellness? Somatic means our bodily wellness, our physicality, our visceral, organs, our stomach, our kidneys, our bladders, our brain, all that's part of our somatic being. And when we use our bodies better and we let go of the emotions that get stuck in these different somatic portions of ourselves, I think, we become healthier and more whole, and we evolve. We're meant to evolve as we work through these imbalances that get stuck in us. And with 4-element thinking, we have another tool to help us see what might be out of balance within our own life situation.
Okay. And how can people bring elemental awareness into small, practical things like eating, walking, or working out?
Okay, well, we talked about walking. So I feel like walking I covered a little bit, by heel striking, by, being a little bit more robust. I always recommend, bring your arms back a little bit more than normal. Sometimes, to go a little further, sometimes I'll say, try to imagine that when you're bring your right foot forward and heel striking with your right foot, bring your right shoulder back, bring your skull on the right side back a little bit more. So and breathe into the right side of your diaphragm region. So, so you divide your breath into 4-count inhales and 4-count exhales, like right, left, as far as inspiration, the heel strike on that same side. So that's a good way of making walking an ever better way of doing things. As far as nutrition and eating, I think the first step is just to appreciate that food is how you bring these natural principles into your life. And that so much of people's foods these days are what I call counterfeit food, denatured food. And you're never going to be healthy. You're never going to have the greatest emotional state that you could have if you're bringing these denatured foods into your body. So just being aware of eating healthy by way of appreciating this elemental natural perspective, I think, is always a tool that one could use to be healthier with nutrition. And then with breathing, if that was another one, was just by breathing, taking time to just meditate, or just breathing, a few moments at a time. I like to divide breaths into even counts of like when I do 4-element yoga, it's oftentimes 4 counts, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. But if you go longer, the longer you breathe, I tell my patients, you can breathe for 20 count inhales. You're not going to die. You might just you'll realize I don't want to go that far if it comes down to it. But slowing down your breath is generally a good thing to do. Slow down your breath. Some people feel like they have to hold their breath for a couple counts. It's not a big thing for me. It's part of some meditation ways of doing things. But breathing is a great way of developing a skill to change what I like to tell my patients is that breathing is this bridge between our conscious and our unconscious minds. So we're always breathing unconsciously, and it's really a reflection of what we're feeling unconsciously. And so if you want to consciously change who we are feeling, or whatever it is like that, by changing how we breathe, our conscious mind, everything will change with it. So if we start slowing down our breath, our consciousness will change, our stress level will go down. We'll find ourselves getting a little spiritual, even if that's part of our predilection, is to feel that vibe of spiritual sensibility or so. So breathing, walking, eating, engaging others in positive ways. I believe one of the things that's lacking today is people encouraging others and being, snarky is I don't like snarkiness. I think that the modern world is too much snarkiness. We're here to encourage people toward their highest goals. And I'm always trying to do that as a doctor for my patients, is to encourage them to the highest goals. There's so many things that are bringing us down, whether it be news, whether it be commercials on TV that are trying to, tell us to buy this or that product. It's going to bring us happiness and joy. But to just have this sensibility that that we can, we're more self-reliant maybe than we think we are. And that when we tap into nature and feel our empowerment and our passions and our creativity and our interactions with others that make this world better, I think our lives will get better, and so will the rest of the world. I'm hoping that the 4 elements will be the next big thing, because the world needs it. Damn it!
So, you touched on something ever so slightly in terms of what I wanted to ask you next, in terms of what role do community and relationships play in keeping our elemental balance strong?
Well, I think that the community is a big part of it, and to have the infrastructure, for that matter, to in a community to kind of let these things happen. So much happens in school, though. Schools are a traditional way that values and ideals are passed to the next generation. So I think something about our education system needs to be improved. But I don't know what the answer is to getting people involved in seeing these 4 elements. What I like to say is everything old becomes new again, and I think that the 4 elements could be the next new thing, because I think people do recognize that something's out of balance, and they're looking around for something, and I don't know why I think that the four elements will do it, but I think that if they don't do it, I don't know what will, because they really are about balance, like nothing else is, in my opinion. And everybody can feel that balance and put that balance in their life in the ways that speak to them. Even I think that the four elements are malleable to do that. And there's a bit of a learning curve, but I think collectively, what can be done is well, for example, I'm actually developing a phone app to use these four elements to create routines in one's life. So each element has there's eight different activities for each element, and the goal is to find a way to live a more balanced life by tapping in these different activities that you might have done that day, and you earn points and get rewards for those things. So that'll be available at Growing Holistically as well, hopefully sooner than later. I've been working on it for 3 years now. But I'm always trying to find tools, to bring it out, not just for individuals, because I think that, I want to see a global or a collective change, because the world is kind of falling apart, and so much imbalance, I think, can be remedied with a different perspective. That, again, I do think that fire, air, water, and earth can speak to people once they understand this cosmic code, as I sometimes call it.
Okay, so for those who feel disconnected from their body or nature, what's the first reconnection step you recommend?
Well, breathing is a great one. Just to become more somatically aware, bodily aware of themselves by breathing slow. And even to slow down their breath as slow as they can do it. Start off at 4-count inhales, 4-count exhales, perhaps. And start slowing it down to maybe 12 counts inhale, and if they want to have a little less than 12 counts exhale, I'm fine with that. But just to kind of become more, slowing down their consciousness a little bit, if you will, their wired nature, perhaps. That would be one of my first things that I would encourage somebody who today is looking for some level of a better balance in their lives. To do some breathing that will make them realize that they have a tool at their own disposal if they choose to use it. Such an easy tool.
Okay. Very easy in truth. So some say modern society is built on fire gone wild, too much speed, ambition, tech. Do you agree?
Well, that fire element, like it's that, light technology, technology is, in a lot of ways, technology is earth and air coming together. Technology, like air is science that gives us an understanding of how things work, and then earth kind of takes that somebody who builds technology. So the point might be that we have too much fire coming our way, and being more somatic, so I believe in body awareness myself. So that's what maybe I want to. I haven't really talked about just being somatically body aware. If you're doing a martial art, if you're doing Tai Chi, you're already kind of feeling some of that somatic awareness that channels you away from that nervous system fire to the physical nature of being a bodily individual. So I don't know if that really answered your question there, because so many people do.
Well, I would just wanted to find out if you agree, if it is the society is built on fire gone wild,
Well,
too much speed.
Well, speed, is a bit of that fire air. Speed is that, fire and air. The modern poles are sort of fire and air. That higher level, quick type of things there. Fire is gone wild. Today's world is fire has gone wild, and that's why you need to be more physical. The physicality of Earth. is that antidote in many ways to fire. That's why people do like to go for walks. We here in Syracuse, people are always talking about going to this park to go for a walk. People know to do that kind of thing, and it's partly because they feel stressed, and the wiredness of their day gets grounded out, literally by walking. So, and the problem of today, like we were saying earlier, is that we don't have reasons to walk. It's in other words, reasons meaning, I have to go to the store to get this and that. We don't have that today, unlike our forebears. So
Uber.
Right, we can just Uber, yeah. So, it's really a sad state of affairs that we've gotten ourselves into. And you as the podcaster who's kind of helping people to navigate the realm of what's out there, you're doing a service by bringing people new information. Because I think everybody's struggling. Would you say people are struggling from what you're picking up in your?
Yes. Many people today are lost and they're searching for answers. And basically, there are many things for that. But a big part of the reason for us being lost is technology and the propaganda that the technology funnels to us. So this is why I'm trying my best to bring on the best minds, thinkers on the planet so that we can reprogram ourselves, because the technology is programming us and we're finding it very difficult to maneuver because we're not told how to think, we're told what to think and what to believe.
I guess so, you're right. And
so it's really tricky for people today, especially like the younger generation, because like we were saying before, I remember as a kid not having internet and we're having to make my own toys. My parents bought toys for me, but we played with toys. Now, I hardly see kids playing with toys. They just play with tablets, smartphones. But like I said, I went out yesterday and I saw some young kids, in a play park, and they were with technology in the play park, like smartphones, playing games in a play park, which is supposed to be physically to play. And I said to myself, wow. Yeah, because I can't remember. I think it was Aldous Huxley. He said that in the future, humans will be addicted to their technology, and the technology will become the drug of the future,
I'm sure
something like that.
Yeah, he's very prescient.
So I think we're in some precarious times now, where from the time kids come out the womb, we're putting smartphones in their hands. And I think there has to be some balance in terms of navigating with technology and children. But I do think that we should let children be children and play, do a lot of running around and, let them bump their knee and scratch their foot. And because that's how they learn at the end of the day, right? They learn, how to avoid accidents, how to, mind-body control, hand-eye coordination, So I think there are a lot of basic things that are being lost now because of the overuse of technology. And although at the same time, I do believe that technology does make our lives easier, but I think that is a slippery slope that we're going down, where it's kind of like becoming the SOMO in the book Brave New World. And it is the thing that we use to basically numb ourselves out to what is going on in the world. And we are just basically, like Yeshua said, we're like the walking dead, let the dead bury the dead, So this is where we're at now. So how do you see humanity's next evolution? Will it rediscover the wisdom of the elements or destroy ourselves by ignoring it?
Well, hope springs eternal, and Dr. W here. Against all odds here. So many people trying to do good. So I feel, beyond me, in their own way, their own paradigm and model, and with their own passion and strategy, So I do feel hopeful for that, but I do, fear that we are stuck in a, I was talking about earlier, I used the word precarious as well. There's always going to be a balance between the modern and the primitive, as I call it, technology and nature, primitive and the modern. But there can be precarious or very productive, beautiful balances. There can be balances that have a lot of heart to them and beauty. And I think ultimately that's what we want, a world of beauty and heart and productiveness. And we have to find a way of finding balance. And technology, can only take us so far. And it's a hard thing to figure out how we're going to, negotiate that balance differently than we are right now. But I want to believe that somehow it can be renegotiated. And ultimately, I don't use that word very often, be renegotiated, but I think on some level it has to be renegotiated. What is this balance? And then we have AI thrown into it and the like. And I do feel as though I'm going to come back to at the core of what the antidote, the core of that opposite pole to technology is nature. And at the core of nature is those four elements, these four principles, and these four ways of appreciating the balance. I want to believe that that's somehow going to rise to the surface. And people are going to go beyond what I figured out to do with it. And I don't have all the answers, but I think that on every level of understanding what to do to make a better balanced world, we can use this four-element paradigm to tease out how to negotiate this balance better. That's what I believe. That's what I want to believe. Whether it can come do that way, but it is scary. To be frank with you, I don't know how the future is going to pan out. It's a scary time.
I think the future it's a scary time for those people who are not preparing. And my idea and my goal is to help people prepare for what is coming with this show. And I think that artificial intelligence is going to be on steroids from 2026. And I think that the disruption is going to be unprecedented. I think it's going to be very, very paradigm shifting for people. And I think that people are going to be even more lost because the video technology from AI now is so good that I can see within the next 5 years, there will be no real, actual, authentic video on the internet anymore.
It's scary.
And you may not even have podcasts anymore where people are actually having video. It would just be all AI generated podcast material with video. This is the level that we're going to get at, right?
I don't know if it's going to get quite that bad, but it will seep into that territory, and
for sure, it will seep in. The technology is improving at a pace that is insane.
Exponentially, everything is just
exponentially
so quickly. That gulf between, like I keep going back to, that gulf is just growing exponentially, and we have to dialogue as individuals and as a collective how to deal with this. And I think, we have to figure it out. And hopefully, people who are leaders and others can help us. I don't know. I'm trying to do my small part, and you are doing yours. And it's just it's a hard thing to figure it out. You're getting me depressed.
I think ultimately what will happen is that every single human on earth will be forced to face themselves in the mirror, and they will have a refinement period, as I call it, or some people call it the night of the soul. And it's going to happen at a very alarming rate where pretty much everyone on planet Earth will be going through it at the same time, because we're about to see some things be revealed to us that are going to shock people, because everything we've been told about ourselves and our history is a lie. Everything they tell us about religion, God, money, science is all a lie. nothing is real. Everything is all fake. And it is much, much deeper than people really realize. However, the key will be to do the internal work on ourselves, learning modalities like what you're talking about with the elements, and bringing in the consciousness from your higher self into you with using the modalities and the teachings that a lot of great minds have shared on this podcast. So I do see a way out, but I am realistic in a sense where we're going to have that moment that squeezes us to make us wake up, because humans are, stubborn. We don't wake up unless we're forced to, or things get really, really bad. And I think that this is our almost certain future. But I do see us waking up. So while I am very optimistic, I'm very realistic that we have more dark days to come, but the dark always have to bring the light. It always has to have the light at the end, because at the end of the day, there's always a balance. There's always a rebalance, right? You can't always have up and not down. You can't always have left and right. You know what I mean? Things must always come back to the center. So let's get you on this one. What would the world look like if education, healthcare, and leadership were all guided by the 4-element model?
Well, it was why I think about education, for one. But leadership, I think that, a good leader understands, the different principles. You have the conservative principle and the liberal principle, for example, and as two fundamental things here in the States, and I guess all over the world for that matter. And so I think that a statesman, what we used to call a statesman, was somebody that would bring these principles together in their time, and that's what I have faith in that. So coming back to what you were saying, I have faith that a statesman, a leader, can pull it together. That the cosmos can even work, in some spiritual way, through, a leader that can somehow understand what needs to be done. And, unfortunately in America, I feel like we've got a terrible leader, but that's another story, who's, bringing us down instead of up, and who's divisive and blah, blah, blah. But we need somebody who brings us together, helps us to see the ideals that we each have. We're all meant, the fire principle is about our idealism. And we're meant to have ideals. And I think that the trouble of our time is that we don't have that. We're not, I mentioned earlier how we're not philosophical enough, or, spiritual for that matter, I suppose. And part of philosophy is to have ideals, or to sense ideals, that there's certain ideals out there that we're meant to find a way of drawing into our lives and balancing within our lives, as they turn into our values. So ideals turn to values that we each have. So my point is that a statesman, a leader, is meant to help us, bring those ideals, our values, in some unified balance. And I think that it can happen. I think it can happen. So that's what kind of keeps me buoyant. And these leaders, could be somewhere that we don't even know. That's what's an amazing thing about today, is through YouTube and all this other stuff, or other social media. You have somebody that just somehow, in New York City, you have this guy that's running for mayor that came out of nowhere and changing the. You can have demagogues doing the same thing in a bad way, but you can have hopefully a good leader that can bring people up. So I'm hopeful for leaders in that way. I'm hoping for that somehow our education system can work. As young, I'd love to see young people somehow having these 4 elemental principles talked about in a way that brings a natural way of approaching their world, that might bring values and ideals into their lives and stick with them for a while, and that they might understand that technology isn't necessarily everything it needs to be, or that it's not the only thing, that other things have to balance technology. And these things are already happening, I guess, within a school system, but by having a higher level way of appreciating it, I think it can be educated into young people. So I'd like to see that somehow. I don't know quite how it would get done, but I think it can get done if the leaders were there, or if the school system. In America, there's lots of different schools that can try different experiments and see where it takes them. So it is valuable education. Like there's different experimental schools, that can try different ways, and so I'd love to see somebody develop a 4-element model for education. I'd love to work with them. I'm actually the executive director of the 4-Element Institute as well, 4elementinstitute.org. And one of our goals is to find different people in different fields, science, academia, the arts, that will use this 4-element paradigm to kind of develop something within their field, their system, gaining new insights and strategies by way of this model. So that might speak to a bit of what you were saying as well. So I am, so the 4-Element Institute is something that I'm trying to get more in this direction that you're talking about.
Okay, interesting. So, Dr. Howard, it's been a very interesting conversation today, and I think we've given the people a lot of insight on the 4-element model that you talk about. So please tell the lovely people at the Conscious Man 7 where they can find you, how they can work with you, any services you have, books you want to plug, and all of that good stuff.
Sure. Thank you there, Todd. Well, my main site is growingholistically.com. If you have a hard time typing in holistically after growing, you can also go drwalsdorf.com or even 4elementdoctor.com. So I'm Dr. Walsdorf, so drwalsdorf.com will lead you to some place where there's a link to different parts of my life, including growing holistically. There's a book that they can buy from those sites. That's actually this is the old one. I have a new version of a book called the 4-Element Code. I think it's called 4-Element Code: Gain Health, Balance, Meaning, and Success as you discover an ancient wisdom. So that's going to be published in about another 3 or 4 weeks. And then next year, I have another book that's called something on the order of the human body as sacred architecture, and that's for people who want to understand how to use their body in a more yoga kind of way, somatic way, and appreciate how our human body is put together in terms of these 4 principles, and actually 5 principles of yoga, of acupuncture as well. So those are, I am a 4-Element Doctor on YouTube, and 4-Element Doctor on Instagram and Facebook. Growing holistically, it's free. So I'm semi-retired now. I have a little extra time. I just want to help people. All I have is free at growingholistically.com. There's a fun group of 4-element little things that they can find out their balance, what I call their personhood score, and ways of understanding how to improve their diet and other parts of the 4-element puzzle that might be useful for them. That are all free, and then a lot of videos, educational videos at Growing Holistically as well. At there, I do offer some, doctor from afar virtual visits with some patients out there. It's not the biggest version of what I'm trying to accomplish. My mission really is to help people discover this 4-element way of thinking. I'm really mission driven. I don't need to make money from it. I just want to make it happen for people to renew themselves with this 4-element way of thinking.
Okay, awesome. And everything Dr. W will be in the description of this podcast. Guys, this time of the year is approaching Christmas, what I call the season of gluttony. And during this time is when people put on the most weight ever. They put on average 3 to 5 kilos of fat. And then come January, they're just having to get newer clothes because nothing fits. If you would like to avoid this season of weight gain and be able to navigate through this season of gluttony, I can help you to burn fat and build muscle. So hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave, and let's see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can do that by visiting our merch store. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And we're having some new designs that are coming very, very soon for this Christmas holiday. If you are on a spiritual journey or you would like to start a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. So hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave and send us a message and I'll help you to get some magic mushrooms. And I know that some of y'all watch this, listen to this on the podcast platforms. And if you don't really like ads and you would like to, get that ad-free experience and also be part of the Conscious Man 7 community, you can also support us through our Patreon or locals pages, and you will get early access to all the podcasts that we're doing. We're looking to do 2 podcasts a week now. So if you would like to help us do that and make it happen, you can do that by supporting us on our Patreon or locals page. You would also get direct access to me, and you would get the same kind of response that my clients get, where they get priority replies from me, because on social media I get tons of messages and tons of emails. So if you want to really get hold of me, you can do that in my Patreon or locals page. So guys, if this episode helped you reconnect to your true nature, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your circle. Leave a comment about which element you're working on, and tag us on Instagram at Adriano_246 or at the Conscious Man 7 podcast or Todd Cave on Facebook. Together, we can help the world remember how to heal itself. This has been another episode of the Conscious Man 7 podcast, where we have conversations that go deeper than the average podcast in our quest to heal our mind, body, and spirit. Dr. W, thanks again for being a guest on the Conscious Man 7 podcast. Until next time, folks, stay conscious, stay connected, and start the process of healing, as it's the only way to achieve your highest potential. Keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.